Hello, everybody. Welcome in to a rare Friday night to the point podcast. But the Stanley Cup playoffs begin tomorrow. I have so many thoughts on the series now that they've all been settled. Want to talk about them all with you today. Going to go through every series. Going to predict the eventual Conn Smythe MVP of the postseason winner. We're going through all of it. So buckle up. We'll also talk about the NBA towards the tail end of the show with the NBA playoffs starting tomorrow. It's going to be a great weekend with so much happening in the sports world. Not to mention 420 if you celebrate. So lots to look forward to. The playoffs are here. Finally. The 16 best teams are going. No play-in like the NBA. You battle to the end. Other organizations are happy they didn't get in. Other organizations like Pittsburgh, Ottawa are angry. But the teams that are in are in. They're happy to be there. They're getting playoff dates. Their owners can promote that they've had a successful season. But as we all know, different teams have different expectations. And there's a lot of teams that are facing a lot of pressure that went in on the deadline, did a lot to improve their team, were in positions last year to succeed and see if they can replicate it again. If we look at the Eastern Conference, the Rangers were a playoff team last year. Capitals were not. Islanders were. Hurricanes were. Florida, Tampa, yes. Boston, Toronto, yes. So the Capitals are the only outlier in the Eastern Conference. Out West, Dallas, yes. Vegas, yes. Winnipeg, yes. Colorado, yes. Edmonton, yes. LA, yes. Vancouver, no. Nashville, no. So 3 new playoff teams. Extremely different from the NFL that averages over 7 new playoff teams a year. So we have 3 new playoff teams in the NHL this year. And I think we have some compelling matchups. We have some history. Looking at one series, the Maple Leafs are the most talked about team in hockey. People love them or people hate them. And that is the antithesis of being relevant. You have to give credit to them on that. Boston Bruins fans hate Toronto. They're talked about too much. Vancouver, a high-profile market. You could argue a better city than Toronto, but they are angry on sports television when the Maple Leafs are talked about more than their precious Canucks. So there's a history. Everybody hates or everybody loves Toronto. I really haven't met somebody in my life that doesn't have an opinion one way or the other on Toronto. They either love them, lots of people in my life, or I know several people who hate them, who can't stand them, who wish them nothing but evil, hatred, and for their woes to continue. There has been no bigger boogeyman, no bigger black cat, if you were, to the Toronto Maple Leafs than the Boston Bruins. The Bruins have won 7 straight playoff series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. The last time the Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Boston Bruins in a series was 1959. My parents were not born. My grandparents were in their teenage years, were in their prime, so to speak. That's the last time Toronto beat the Boston Bruins. There's the heartbreak of 13, seeing Boston get to 3 cup finals in the 2010s. Toronto's made 8 straight postseasons, which goes unnoticed, which is really impressive, Leafs Nation. But Boston has been their foe. Boston has been their black cat, their antithesis of why they can't succeed. But now they get another opportunity. In a regular season that I have deemed a failure for the Toronto Maple Leafs and I have deemed a success for the Boston Bruins because I thought they could miss the postseason entirely. But they were successful. They overcame Brad Marchand, Pavel Zacha, my guy David Pastrnak, the best goalie tandem in the National Hockey League. They are here. But you could argue Toronto has as good a chance as ever. Austin Matthews scores 69 goals. Bill Nylander couldn't get to 100 points but got close, kind of like Mitch Marner, one of the most dynamic players in the league. Max Domi, Tyler Bertuzzi in the back half of the season, extremely productive. Ryan Reeves found his skating legs again. I'm not going to talk about their defense in glowing terms because it isn't in glowing terms. I think it's very average at best, so I'm going to screw that plan. Goaltending, that's average on the best day, but they have a good team. And the Boston Bruins are flawed. Pavel Zacha, Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, Morgan Geekie. Those are the four centers of the Boston Bruins. While Charlie Coyle has been better this year than I ever thought he would be, because normally in his NHL career you throw expectations at Charlie Coyle and he crumbles. He goes into dust. You never see him do anything, but they have been productive. Zacha has fit in perfect with David Pastrnak. Trent Frederick, 20-goal scorer, has some edge, can fight, can also has great hands. But if you look at it, 34, 91, do they match up? You have a guy who just scored 69 goals, who's won 3 straight Rocket Richard trophies, and you have a guy in John Tavares who is granted exceptional status, who's taken number 1 overall, who's you could argue, one of the best players in the league the last decade plus. It doesn't on paper. But the Leafs have been better on paper than their opponents most seasons, the last number of them. But last season they beat Tampa. They got past the first round, they ran into Florida, and they did what every other Eastern Conference team that played Florida, they lost pretty easily. The Leafs are cagey. Sheldon Keefe not talking about injuries. We did get today that Nylander, questionable for Game 1, was not at practice. Bobby McMahon, who hasn't been playing, not at practice. Looks like TJ Brody is going to be a healthy scratch for Game 1, which is the correct call. By the way, the guy's been a liability since about November. For Toronto to win this series, it sounds simplistic, but it's really not. They need their players to be better than Boston's, and their players are better than Boston's. So if you think about it that way, if I have an ace and you have a 8 of hearts, I'm better off than you. You need a lot more to go your way than I do. If I see another ace on that board, I'm feeling pretty damn good about my hand. You need an 8, you need another 8, you're going to need a straight flush, you're going to need something to help you. If I see a couple aces on the board, if I have at least one ace to start, I'm definitely not folding before the flop. There's a 0% chance. If I have ace 8, let me see the cards. There might be some people that fold ace 8. Yeah, they're called cowards. No balls. But guess what? I'm seeing the flop. Give me the river. Okay? So Toronto walks in with an ace of spades in Austin Matthews. They walk in with a king in Mitch Marner and a queen in Bill Nylander. They always have those players. And those 3 players currently playing are better than Brad Marchand. I can't say all 3 of them are better than David Pastrnak because I don't believe that they are. Actually, I think only one of them is. But one guy compared to 3, they need to play a team game. Their best players have to be their best players. They need to give a crap in the defensive zone because the defensive play, the defensive core for the Toronto Maple Leafs is not a skill. It's a liability. Goaltending over the last little while hasn't been a strength, has been a liability. But Boston, they had sketchy goaltending last year. Allmark wins the Vezina Trophy. Wasn't very good in the playoffs. Swayman, I think, will get the start tomorrow night. We'll see. But you can get to him. I mean, you beat Andrei Vasilevsky in a series last year. He's the best goaltender in the world. He's been to 3 Stanley Cup finals. It's not Tuukka Rask on the other side. It's a guy that you can get if you're providing the right offense, if you're potent, if you're constantly attacking, get bodies in front of the goaltender, shots from the point, things of that nature. Normally, Boston's tactic against Toronto was make the game physical. Because Toronto in the past in these series had one player that was physical and he would go over the line, and that was Nazem Kadri. A polarizing figure for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But he was really one of the only players with pushback, with backbone, with a spine. And sure, he tried to decapitate Jake DeBrusk, but that was really all they had. And Mark Giordano, who was a couple years younger than he is now. But you look around. Reeves, Domi, McMahon has some bite. Yarncroke will hit if he's going to be in the lineup. I think he's an X factor for the series. I like him. They're not going to be the scared little brother this time. Simon Benoit is playing for a couple of reasons. He's big. He plays with heart, and he gives a shit on every shift. And he's not going to be afraid to say, if you want to fuck around, try me. Go ahead. Lyubushkin, same thing. I expect this series to be physical. I expect this series to get nasty a little bit. Both teams don't like one another. The Boston Bruins beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 4 times in the regular season. Boston's advantage? Lindholm, McAvoy, Forbert, Grzelcyk, Peak. Boston's got a better defense. Charlie McAvoy is better than any Toronto Maple Leafs defenseman in the last 30 years. If you think I'm wrong, go look it up and come back with a name, and I'll tell you that you're wrong. And I'll save you some time. Thomas Kaberle, wrong. No. Charlie McAvoy's a stud. Charlie McAvoy's a beast. Moves the puck, jumps into the rush, will knock your head off if you want. Defends the front of the net. Lindholm's a jack of all trades. Peak's a guy that picked up at the deadline from Columbus. Grzelcyk's just a puck-moving defenseman who can be had. But I like Boston's defense, and we've talked about their goaltending. Marchand, Pasternak are competitors. You can't underestimate that. They play with that intensity. But Bergeron's not walking through that door. Krejci's not walking through that door. You're relying on guys like Geekie, guys like Frederick, who haven't had the moments, who haven't been there, who haven't felt it, to come out and play. And that can be a scary thought. For as much as the Maple Leafs have failed, and they have over the last number of years, you look at Max Domi. He was in the conference final quietly last year for Dallas. Went all the way there. Had a pretty good playoff. Tyler Bertuzzi was on the Bruins. Yes, was out in the first round, but he was their best player. He led the team in points during their series against the Florida Panthers. Ryan Reeves has been in a Stanley Cup final. Joel Edmondson has been to 2 separate Stanley Cup finals. 1-1. Played big minutes for the Montreal Canadiens on their improbable run during the second half of the bubble, during the Fauci era. So they have guys who've been through it. Austin Matthews has played a lot of first-round playoff games. So has Mitch Marner. So has Bill Nylander. Home ice matters, but I've said this before. I don't think it matters as much as it used to. Game 7, certainly. I think there's a scare factor there. I don't think the Maple Leafs want to be playing in Game 7 at TD Garden. A lot of bad memories, a lot of losses. But again, you have to point out both sides of history. Boston lost a Game 7, their home ice, last year, overtime. So they're not perfect. Boston lost a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final to St. Louis in 2019. So there's ebbs and flows. If you're going on history, the Boston Bruins are going to win this series because they always win the series. And that's sometimes I agree with that argument. When people say LeBron or MJ, I'm an MJ guy. He's got 6 rings. LeBron's got 4. Okay, he's been to the finals 10 times. Okay, well, he lost 6. He's lost as many championships as Jordan won. I'd rather win than lose. History, sure, you can make that argument. But Boston's an older team. They're morphing. Jim Montgomery has done a fantastic job in this group of players, and you cannot credit Marchand, Pasternak, McAvoy, the heart of this team, for keeping them this damn good. They should have won their division. They shouldn't be playing Toronto, but they blew it the last 2 nights, losing to Washington and losing to the sad sack Ottawa Senators. All that being said, I trust the Leafs' best players more than I trust Boston's. I like Boston's D more than I like Toronto's. I like Boston's goaltending more than I like Toronto's, but Toronto's can be great. I think there's a changing of the guard. We saw it with Golden State, where sometimes just the younger, faster, hungrier team beats you. This will not be a cakewalk series. I've been going back and forth on the games, but I've been saying this for a while. If you're a Leaf fan, you should want the Boston Bruins. It does not guarantee you a victory, but it gives you a much better chance because the Florida Panthers are better than the Boston Bruins, and they're better than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Tight series, but I think the production, I think the season for Austin Matthews, I think he has a huge round. I think he has 10 points plus in this series. Mitch Marner will play well. Another early prediction, I don't think by the time the series is over, it will be Bertuzzi, Domi, and Matthews. Mitch Marner will be back playing with Austin Matthews by Game 3. At the latest. Could be sooner than that. Toronto will start both Samsonov and Joseph Woll in round 1. I think Joe Woll is the starting goalie at the end of the series. Boston will start both Swayman and Ullmark in this series as well. But I got Toronto winning the series in 6 games. Winning the series on home ice, something they did not do last year. They won it in Tampa Bay. I just think it's time for them. They're younger. They're faster. They have their flaws, but every team does. And they have the best goal scorer on the planet. They have one of the best passers on the planet. The key will be their power play. I've hated it at times this season because there's no movement and it's so predictable. Oddly enough, I think it'll work in this series. Boston will take more penalties. The Maple Leafs will capitalize. I got Toronto in 6, defeating the Boston Bruins for the first time since 1959 in the postseason. But should be a very fun series. Should make every fan sweat a little bit, panic. But I got the Leafs in 6. Let's stay in the Atlantic. The Battle of Florida. My parents were supposed to go see Toronto, Florida game 2. Then Florida won, Boston lost. Now it's Florida, Tampa. I hope they kept the tickets because it's just as good. These two teams hate each other maybe even more than Boston and Toronto. Real hatred. Tampa owns Florida like Boston owns Toronto. Florida, President's Trophy winners. Huberdeau, 115 points, on top of the world, feeling good, and then you get swept in the second round. You get swept. It's not close, and it changed the Panthers. They traded Huberdeau, acquired Tkachuk, and they went on their incredible run last year. And has continued winning the Atlantic Division on the last day of the season this year. We know Tampa's history. 3 Stanley Cup Finals. They have a team full of Hall of Famers that includes Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, now a 2-time Art Ross winner, very well could be a 2-time Hart Trophy winner. Braden Point, who I think is going to be a Hall of Famer because he's just a stud. Hedman, already lock. Vasilevsky, already lock. However, the core of the team, yes, but the outskirts has changed for Tampa. You lose important pieces. You bring in guys like Nick Paul, Brandon Hagel, Anthony Duclair, who turned out to be a great deadline addition. And I think Tampa's team up front is a lot better than it was. They're a lot more threatening than they were prior to the trade deadline. And they have a chance in this series. They are a threat. And also you have Vasilevsky out there. But you don't have Sergachev because he broke his leg in December. So you have Hedman, who's older and has to play a ton of minutes. Darren Radish, who, if you're a regular NHL fan, you probably never heard of him. Eric Chernak, who's great when healthy. Perbix, Matt Dumba, who they got for nothing at the trade deadline. It's not a great defense. When you're a great team, you lose players. It hurts you from repeating. That's what made them, 3 Stanley Cup Finals in a row so improbable, so incredible. But I view Tampa as a threat. They're not an easy opponent. They have a lot of ways that they can hurt you. Nikita Kucherov's the best power play performer in the league. His passing ability, his ability to find Braden Point in the slot. Braden Point gets the puck. He goes over the blocker, top shelf. He's done it about 20 times this year. Stamkos in the Ovechkin office. So they have ways that they can hurt you. All that being said, Florida, to me, is just a dangerous, dangerous team. Matthew Tkachuk had the 4th most points in the NHL after the All-Star break. Carter Verhaeghe has another season where he gets 40 goals. Sam Reinhart has 57, career high. Sasha Barkov, I think, is going to win the Conn Smythe for best defensive forward. Tarasenko, I don't love him, but he's on the team. Nick Cousins, pain in the ass. Every team hates him. Anton Lundell, really good defensive center. They're just a team you hate. You don't like playing. They're mean. They don't have Radko Gudas, and I love me some Radko Gudas. Every person hates Radko Gudas. Leafs fans were crying because he was yelling in Joe Wall's face. Win the series, then he won't yell in your face. Radko Gudas is a nasty piece of business, and they're going to miss him. But Nico Mikkola, St. Louis Blues defenseman, now on Florida. He's 6'5", pretty big dude. Gustav Forsling, one of the best defensive defensemen in the league, period. Brandon Montour, remember him last year? Pretty good. Aaron Ekblad, going to be back for Game 1, confirmed by Paul Maurice the other day. Tampa's not a good defensive team. Florida is an okay defensive team, but they have the ability to turn it on. We saw what they did last year. And if Bobrovsky can play like he did in the postseason last year, they are the best team in the Eastern Conference. Period. Vasilevsky can make a difference. He could steal a round. He could steal a couple. But the firepower, to me, this is another series where they're happy to be here. They want to keep competing. I understand their mindset. Steven Stamkos doesn't have a contract for next year. He scored 40 goals this year. Really surprising that it's gotten this far. What's the future of Hedman? What are you doing with Kucherov? What's this team going to be? It's in a weird spot. You're still trying to compete for titles, but you're kind of out of your cup window. I think Florida has more pieces. I think Florida has more to throw at the Tampa Bay Lightning that they won't be able to deal with. They'll wear them down, muck it up in front of the net, create havoc for Andrei Vasilevsky. Tight series, back and forth, close games, physical. I expect game one to be you have a 1 o'clock puck drop on Sunday, an afternoon game. That's 1 o'clock in Florida, be 2 o'clock here in Atlantic time zone. That's going to be a nasty game. Early afternoon. I love it. Set the tone. But I have Florida winning the series. I get Florida in 6. I get Florida and Toronto meeting in the second round for the second straight year. Credit to Tampa. At times, it looked like they weren't going to make the playoffs. They get in with ease. Kucherov with 100 assists, only the 5th player ever to do that. Another over 140 points this year, another Art Ross trophy, might win the Hart. But I think Florida has too many weapons. They're a little more deep. And I expect Bobrovsky to be okay. Wasn't great down the stretch, but he wasn't great down the stretch last year. He wasn't playing. Alex Lyon was the starting goalie until Game 3 against Boston. Then they had to turn back to Bobrovsky. So he can jump on a moving train. He did it last year. I expect him to be okay and do it again. Let's move to the Metro. Rangers, Capitals. Rangers, President's Trophy winners. No team has won the Stanley Cup being the President's Trophy winner since the Chicago Blackhawks in 2013. Over a decade, the President's Trophy curse has lived on. I don't believe in it. I consider it stupid. But you might think superstition, okay. Superstition's not going to matter in this series because one team is very talented, pretty deep, has a lot going for it, and the other team's the Washington Capitals, to make it really simplistic. Panarin almost had 50 goals, and I hate the way Artemi Panarin plays most nights. After most games, he can take his gear off and not have to shower because he doesn't have any sweat on his body. And to see him in the playoffs, I want to see how he plays. You know what you have to do, be physical with him. And he will back off. He will stick to the outside because he doesn't want to engage. We know that definitively. But he's a wizard with the puck. Another really good power play in New York with Chris Kreider, who somehow gets 40 goals every year. And Alex Lafreniere, who took a big step. Kako had a decent season. Philip Heedle's practicing. Looks like he'll return at some point. He had a nasty head injury, but he is practicing. Zibanejad, Trocheck, who had a great season. Matt Rempe, who took the league over. Rempe Wilson might be fun for a couple games. Not to mention, you have Adam Fox, who's one of the best defensemen in the league. He's always paired with Ryan Lindgren. That's just a great pair. Lindgren is meat and potatoes. He's my grandfather's type of defenseman. High and hard, physical, get the puck out of the zone, block a shot, change. That's him. Doesn't try to be too fancy. He knows who his partner is. He knows that his partner is uber skilled, and he's going to let Adam Fox do the shifty, the skill type plays, and he's going to be him. He doesn't try to change who he is. You also have Jacob Trouba, who's a bus on skates, who if you're on the trolley tracks, he will run you over. Keandre Miller, who's taken big steps. Love the kid. If you don't watch the Rangers a lot, watch number 79 for the Rangers. Can move the puck. He can skate. He is so versatile. Love the player. So the Rangers, and they also have this guy named Igor Shesterkin, who was garbage in the playoffs last year, but he's one of the best goalies in the league. And we're talking about 3 Russian goalies already. Shesterkin, Bobrovsky, and Vasilevsky. Those 3 guys are 3 of the best goalies in the league, period, top to bottom. Capitals. In a fight that's really one-sided, if you have a guy who's never trained jiu-jitsu, never trained wrestling, and you're going in there with a guy who knows every discipline, you have a pincher's chance to beat him. Maybe you catch him on the chin, and you drop him, and you escape in a fight that you never should win. The Capitals have a goalie chance of winning this series. Charlie Lindgren has allowed 3 goals in his last 3 games. Was one of the best goalies down the stretch. Great story. Was a 3rd-string goalie to Carey Price at one point. And the Canadiens Cup run ended up being the backup goalie because of an injury to Jake Allen. Then leaves Montreal that offseason, goes to St. Louis, plays some there, gets to a Calder Cup final, loses, then becomes a free agent again and signs a 2-year, one-way deal with the Washington Capitals. Seemed like a crazy deal because he doesn't have pedigree. He's never really played in the NHL, gets a one-way deal. But he was better than Darcy Kemper down the stretch, a Stanley Cup champion in Colorado. He is their number 1 goalie. He's the guy they relied on to make the saves, to play in the big games. And they have a chance with him. Ovechkin's still a threat. Great back half, 50-goal pace in the second half of the season. John Carlson, TJ Oshie still have the old guys. Dylan Strome's been good. Tommy Wilson. A decor that is quite awful. Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Alexiev. I love Ovechkin as much as the next guy. I hope he breaks Gretzky's record. He's going to break Gretzky's record. He's the best goaltender. He's the best goal scorer in league history, period. But this team just can't match up. It's not close. It's a mismatch. Goaltending, Rangers. Firepower up front, Rangers. Defensive core, Rangers. Age, Rangers. The Capitals shouldn't be here. The Penguins are better than the Capitals. The Red Wings are better than the Capitals. And I don't know about Philly. They're about the same. But 2 teams would have been better for the Rangers than the Capitals, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. They got in. I'm not going to predict a sweep. I don't have a sweep for any of the series. But I have the Rangers in 5 games, and I have this being the easiest series of them all to predict. Because I just think the Rangers are better. They bring more to the table. They get to the second round with relative ease. New York Islanders, Carolina Hurricanes. Met in the first round last year. Was a closer series than some people predicted. The differences going into this season. Well, Lane Lambert is no longer the head coach of the New York Islanders. Patrick was. You could also say that Noah Dobson's a better player than he was last year. True. Matt Barzal has been a more dangerous player under Patrick Waugh than he ever was under Lane Lambert. True. The Islanders might have the quietest 30 goal scorers in the league. Horvat, Kyle Palmieri, who got 30, and Brock Nelson. All 30 goal scorers that you might not think, oh, this team had 30 goal scorers on their roster. So they can score. Since Patrick Waugh took over, they played a more run and gun offense, move the puck. You're seeing guys like Scott Mayfield, Adam Pelech, Romanov jumping into the play, not being afraid to step up because they have the freedom under Patrick Waugh. You still want to play good defensive hockey, but the Islanders have had more skill than people have realized for a long time. They're just starting to see it all of a sudden. So I think the Islanders are better than most think. I think they're a more dangerous team. They're physical. They love playing in the playoffs. You'll get guys like Casey Cizikas, Cal Clutterbuck, Matt Martin. These guys have been in the postseason. 2017, 2018. It was the New York Islanders in the conference finals playing against the Tampa Bay Lightning. A lot of that roster still here. So they have playoff experience. They've been through the wars. They always find a way to make the playoffs. But on the other side, you have Carolina, the best defensive team in the league, led by my main man, Jacob Slavin, who, if they should make an award for best defenseman in the league, and that would be just, you say, well, it's the Norris Trophy. Well, really, it's a points award. Whoever gets the most points on defense wins an award. It has nothing to do with how good you are in your own zone or what's your hockey IQ or block shots or just, how good you are, how many minutes you play. Jacob Slavin would have won that award about 3 times already, but he's never going to because there's no award. We'll make it up here. Best defenseman in the league, Slavin, maybe. I like him. Slavin, Brent Burns, not too shabby. Dmitry Orlov, who they got who was with the Boston Bruins last year. Jalen Chatfield's taking big steps. Love him. Brett Pesce, contract year, motivated, plays great. I love their defense. And also Freddie Anderson's coming back from his serious injury has been, you could argue, the best goalie in hockey. He's got a .937 save percentage since coming back from that scary injury where it looked like he might never play again. Now, that's always subject to change because Freddie Anderson is mercurial. He's, you never know what you're getting. Kind of bipolar. You never, just game to game, he could be completely different. But I like the Hurricanes. They have waves of attack that they can come at you with. Aho, Svechnikov, Gensel, deadline acquisition. Jordan Stahl still on this team. Jordan Martinook, stud, Seth Jarvis, who they got from the Leafs in the Patrick Marleau trade. That hurts. Quiet 30-goal scorer. They're better than they were last year, and they got to the conference final. The only thing I hate about the Hurricanes is that Rob Brendamore, one of the best coaches in the league, still does not have a contract for next year, and I hope that comes back to burn them and he goes somewhere for more money. But that's another story for another day. Teams, get your checkbook out. We get this series again. This is a series that you put on a network nobody cares. This will be the least viewed series of round 1 in my mind. I'll be watching it, but I don't know about other people. Because they're not high-profile teams. People don't really like watching the Islanders. They're not the same Islanders, I'm telling you right now. If it was, I'd tell you. But they're not the boring Islanders, trap, dump the puck in, don't allow scoring chances anymore. It's crazy, too, because Patrick Waugh comes in. You have Ilya Sorokin, who was given an 8-year extension in the offseason. Patrick Waugh says, screw you to the netminder, the number 1. Semyon Varlamov, who we had for a hot minute in Colorado, was their guy down the stretch. He's their goaltender going into the playoffs. They're going with the veteran. Semyon Varlamov will start game 1 tomorrow afternoon against the New York Islanders. So that's crazy in and of itself. All that being said, physical series, close games, in the weeds. Both teams defend super well. Both teams block shots, eliminate scoring chances. Carolina's just better. Carolina, they'll win faceoffs. They create turnovers in their defensive zone. They find ways to put pucks in the back of the net, and they have more firepower than they did a year ago. I got Carolina defeating the New York Islanders in the same amount of games as they did last year, 6 games, and advancing to the second round where they will meet up with the New York Rangers. I got Florida beating Toronto in the second round, getting to the conference final. That'll be a 6 or 7 game series where Florida will get the better of the Leafs as they did last year. And I got Carolina beating the Rangers in the second round of the Metro half. That'll go 7. Tight series, but I like Carolina. That leaves Carolina, Florida. That would be a rematch of last year's conference final. I've been saying all year I had Florida winning the cup. And I'm not so sure anymore. I think they're going to go far. The way Carolina plays, I really like them. And they have more ways that they can beat you this year than they did last year. Getting Kuznetsov, getting Gensel, solid net minding, that defense core, another year under your belt. Paul Maurice and Rob Brendamore are not exactly the best of friends. Motivation, that's another rivalry where those two teams don't like each other down south. And ultimately, I'm going to stick with Florida because I predicted them from the beginning. I'm not going to back off of that. I also like Bobrovsky more than I like Freddie Anderson. But that could go either way. That's a 6 or 7 game series. It was a sweep last year, but 3 of the games went to overtime, and all 4 were decided by 1 goal. It was that nip and tuck. We'll see what happens this time around. That's the Eastern Conference. Let's move out west. Dallas Stars, Vegas Golden Knights in round 1. Rematch of the conference final out west last year. Went 6 games, Vegas got the better of Dallas. Dallas is a great squad. Add Chris Tanev at the trade deadline to pair with Heiskanen, who's a stud on the back end. You might look, Klingberg is gone, and you look at Dallas and go, well, why are Dallas so good? Why is this team dangerous? Well, one of the main reasons why they're dangerous is because they have so many different guys that can produce, that can come at you in waves. Wyatt Johnston, pretty damn good little player. Another guy, quiet 30 goals. Logan Stankoven was a guy they called up from the American League that was like a deadline ad. Rupe Hintz has been a top-line player for years. Little Joe Pavelski, still searching for a Stanley Cup. One of the best American-born hockey players of all time without gold. The better of the Robertson brothers, not Nick, Jason, the good one. Dadonov, Duchesne, who had a really productive year with 25 goals, 65 points with the Dallas Stars. Mason Marchment, love him. Plus 22 for everybody 55 and older. And on the back end, you look, Esa Lindell, defensive defenseman. Can play a lot of minutes if you need him to. Averages 24 a night, quietly. Tanev, who's only going to play 19 on this team. Niles Lundqvist, Ryan Suter, still really good. Miro Heiskanen, who played 30 their last game of the season. He plays the whole game. I think he'll be the top 5 nominated for the Norris Trophy. This team's really good, and you have Jake Ottinger, who's one of the most promising goalies in the league, an American, who, when dialed in, is dangerous. But then you have Vegas, who's the most unpredictable team going into the Stanley Cup playoffs for me. Because Mark Stone's going to return, but he hasn't played in a long time. But he didn't play for a long time going to the playoffs last year. They lose in the last game of the regular season to the Anaheim Ducks. They should be playing Edmonton, but they're not. They lose that game and they let LA beat Chicago, and now here they are. They had won, I think they had points in their first 14 games, and yet you stumble into the playoffs. The final wildcard team, a lot of injuries, a lot of inconsistencies. Defending your Stanley Cup is extremely difficult. But then you look and you go, deadline. You had Noah Hannafin, who was the best defenseman available. You lock him up to an 8-year extension. And now you can say at any point in time, any night, you can have Hannafin, Alex Pietrangelo, or Shea Theodore on the ice. Theodore and Pietrangelo normally play together, but if you want to split them up, you could have one of those defensemen on the ice at all times, and that's a pretty damn good chip. That's a pretty damn good trump card to have in your back pocket. Adin Hill, Logan Thompson, not exactly a glamorous tandem, but they were not a glamorous tandem last year. Adin Hill was the third stringer. Laurent Brossoit, the backup in Winnipeg now, blew out his hammy. Logan Thompson got hurt. Here comes Adin Hill. He wins the Stanley Cup. His name's on the Stanley Cup. You'd never heard of the guy before. Tomas Hertl, deep runs. You get him at the deadline at the last second. Nobody saw it coming. He waived his no trade to leave San Jose to Vegas, arguably their biggest rival. Mark Stone, Jonathan Marchessault, Mr. Conn Smythe, another 40-goal campaign. Stud. Riley Smith is gone, but you still have Wild Bill Karlsson. It's a good team. A really good team. A deep team, but they don't have a lot of cohesion. They haven't played a lot of games together. And you're left wondering, can they put it together early enough? To me, whether it was Edmonton or whether it was Dallas, it is the best time to get Vegas right now. Because the deeper they go, the scarier the team they become. Because they get their mojo going. They remember what it was like last year. And then all of a sudden you go, oh shit, this team's pretty good. I don't know. My overall thought on this series changed some opinions for me going deeper when I tell you who I got going to the Stanley Cup final. I think this series is going to be really difficult for Dallas. And I have Dallas winning it. I have Dallas defeating Vegas, doing what they couldn't do last year, but I think it's going to be 7 games. And I think it's going to be a lot, and it's going to be wear and tear because Vegas is going to take a piece out of you. Because they took a piece out of Edmonton, and they take a piece out of every opponent, and they make it difficult. Pietrangelo is a nasty piece of business. Nick Hague is like a human fridge. He's just a massive defenseman. Hannafin's a big boy. Mark Stone plays for keeps. Marchessault, not the biggest dude, but he'll throw a hit. It might be a little late. Ivan Barbashev. He broke Sammy Girard's spleen a couple years ago, for Christ's sake. So, I mean, this team doesn't fuck around. But Dallas is just such a great team. There's teams with great individuals where you look around and go, wow, Edmonton, are they a great team or do they have a bunch of really skilled players? Or Colorado, who we'll talk about. Dallas is a team that is just functions. They know how to play together. They've done it. It's a similar team to last year. I love the Tanev addition. They're the best team in the Western Conference, but I think they get one of the worst draws. I'd rather play Winnipeg. I'd rather play Colorado. I'd rather play Los Angeles. I'd rather play Vancouver. I'd rather play Nashville than playing Vegas in the first round. And you know what? I'd rather play Edmonton than playing Vegas in the first round. I think this series goes 7 games, but I have Dallas winning it. A war of a first round two of the best teams in the league when completely healthy, playing at their apex. But Dallas just as an overall squad, they're reliable defensively. They have a lot of smart players on this roster, a lot of guys hungry to win, like little Joe Pavelski, like a Chris Tanev, like a Jamie Benn, who haven't won in their respective careers. I have Dallas edging out Vegas and doing what they couldn't do last year, and that's beat them. Winnipeg, Colorado. If you're judging this series going into the postseason, you have Winnipeg winning quite easily. Just less than a week ago, Winnipeg beat Colorado 7-0 in Denver at Ball Arena. Whooped their ass. Tore them a new one. Alexander Georgiev has the worst save percentage in the months of March/April for starting goaltenders. That's not great. And I don't particularly trust him. Not to mention, Rantanen's been banged up. Head injury of sorts. Lekkonen's been banged up. Sammy Girard, a little bit banged up because he always is. So you look around and go, wow, that's not a lot of positives. You do have Nathan MacKinnon, who got over 50 and over 140 points on the season. He's fantastic. Cale Makar will be nominated for the Norris Trophy once again. And while I think Quinn Hughes will win it, I think Cale Makar is the best defenseman in the world. Nice trump card to have. Josh Manson, who was huge to them winning the Cup a couple years ago. Acquire Casey Middlestat, the trade deadline. Jonathan Drouin has been a really good find for them. Ross Colton, you got from nothing from the Tampa Bay Lightning because they need to shed salary. Colorado is a good team. But they're 0-3 against the Jets this year. You could argue they should have won this division. They don't. They end up in third. They don't even get home ice. And Winnipeg has something that Colorado doesn't. They have a great goaltender. Connor Hellebuyck's going to win the Vezina. He's one of the best goalies in the world. Has had his playoff games have been up and down. He's not exactly been pillar to post, an awesome guy in the clutch moments. But his season has been sublime. Winnipeg's another team over individuals. And Dallas, I think, has better individuals than Winnipeg. We look at Winnipeg. Mark Scheifele's a really good player. Kyle Connor's a great finisher. Adam Lowry, the team captain, the heartbeat of the team. Nikolai Ehlers, a very good secondary player. Tyler Toffoli, leadership, veteran, knows how to get it done in the playoffs, but not a game changer, not a star, not a superstar. Gabe Velarde, a good draft pick, I think a 20-25 goal scorer for a long time in the league, but again, not an X factor, so to speak. But Rick Bowness has them playing good hockey. They have a great goaltender. They play fundamentally strong. They've had the same defense core, basically, for a number of years, where you got Schmidt and Stanley and Neil Pionk, Dylan DeMello, Dylan Sandberg, Josh Morrissey. Those defensemen were all on the team last year. They have cohesion. They know how to play with one another. This team doesn't spend big money. Sean Monahan was a good deadline acquisition. Played 83 out of he's supposed to play 82 games. He played 83 because he got traded and played 2 extra games for Winnipeg. So they got a lot going for them. They're feeling good. You think about what they've gone through this year. You had to buy out Blake Wheeler. Seems like all hope is lost. Looks like Scheifele, Hellebuyck are leaving. But you sign them both on the eve of training camp. Rick Bowness has to leave the team because his wife is ill. Does that, comes back, then he has to leave the team for his own personal reason, not due to his wife. Then he has to come back again. So he left the bench twice. This is all after he called out the team after losing in the first round last year in kind of embarrassing fashion. Called out their heart, their passion, everything in between, losing to Vegas. This is a tricky one because I like Hellebuck. And Winnipeg fundamentally plays really good hockey. But Nathan MacKinnon is that guy. And it's hard to win 4 series when you have a team that isn't as good as all the other teams that you're going up against. And I don't think that's going to happen for Colorado. I think they got worse as the year has gone on. Their play has dipped. Their goaltending's been horrible. They didn't do enough to help out the goaltending at the deadline. You bring in Walker at the deadline. You bring in Middlestat. You do a lot to try to help. I don't think it's going to be enough long term. But it's always the NBA. All the best players will win the respective series normally. It's kind of changing, but you still get that sometimes. To me, Winnipeg is the better team overall, fundamentally, the way they play. And I see a lot of experts projecting the Winnipeg Jets to win this series. And it's a great opportunity. And for them to get to a second round in a season where I don't think many people expected it would be great. It would help their fan base and help tickets. And it wasn't a great year for them for selling tickets. But I don't think it's going to happen. I'm rolling with Colorado in 7. I just believe the best players of Colorado are X factors, and I think Winnipeg's aren't. In that close game, if it goes to overtime, I think you have a game breaker in Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen that you just can't say the same thing for the Winnipeg Jets. And Georgiev scares the hell out of me, and he could be horrible, and the Jets could win this series in 5 games. And if you're picking the Winnipeg Jets, I don't blame you. Because last night I'm doing my notes, I'm doing my study before I talk to you all today, writing down different things. And I always, at the bottom of my write-up, I go what my pick is. I had Winnipeg at first, and I scratched them out. I'm riding with Colorado because I just think they have that game, those game breakers that Winnipeg doesn't. Hellebuck is, but I think they can overcome it. Colorado, beginning of the year for me, I go, that's a team that can make a Stanley Cup final. I don't believe that anymore. I don't think they have that upside. I don't think they have that win equity. But I do believe that they can win around on the road. And I have them beating Winnipeg in 7 games, advancing to the second round. Let's move to the Pacific Division. Edmonton, LA for the 3rd straight year. Sorry. Oh, fell asleep. Yeah, I'm not thrilled about this, but here's the thing. They would have met if it was the 1-8 format as well. And if the 1-8 format was in the Eastern Conference, all the matchups would be the same, which is funny because people complain about it, and that's normally how it happens. That's just a fun fact for the day. But do I love Edmonton, LA for the 3rd straight year? I don't. I wanted Edmonton, Vegas. Thought that was better, more interesting, tough matchup for Edmonton off the top. But I'll tell you what I think it did. Edmonton not getting Vegas, Edmonton has a great path. And Edmonton has the best chance of any team to end the cup drought for Canada this year. No Canadian team has won a Stanley Cup since 1993. We all know it. I think it's a little overblown because 18 players on the Vegas Golden Knights were Canadian last year, so lots of Canadians win the Stanley Cup. But they could do it. They had the best player in the world on their team. They have Leon Draisaitl. They have a 55-plus goal scorer in Zach Hyman. Evan Bouchard, who has his warts but is a power play dynamo. Evander Kane, when on, can go. You have Corey Perry, the Worm, who's hungry to win another championship, who's motivated to play on a team that has a chance. They're better than what they were. Stuart Skinner went through that tough round against Vegas last year. I think he's going to grow from it, learn from it, be better this year, given that experience, given that circumstance. And I think Edmonton's just a dangerous team. And being on FanDuel Sportsbook, I wanted to bring this up for all of you. Looking at the Stanley Cup odds, you can get Edmonton right now at plus 800. They are tied for the third best odds with Dallas and the New York Rangers to win the Stanley Cup. And they're in real good shape to beat LA because they're a massive favorite going in to that series. LA, Cam Talbot, solid goalie. Edmonton and LA both fired a coach this year. Pierre-Luc Dubois has been nothing short of a flop. Just a guy that has so much potential. But I said from the beginning, stupid signing, pain in the ass player. I wouldn't have done it. Byfield's looked good. Trevor Moore, 30-goal season. Adrian Kempe wasn't as good as he was last year, but he could be good in the postseason. You have Arvidsson, who was out for most of the year, but he's back healthy now, going into the playoffs, which helps. Jordan Spence, 71 games this year, quietly a good season for him. Still love Kopitar, still love Doughty, playing 24-plus minutes a night at his age. Averages 25.50 this year for the season. Plus 15, 50 points. The kid's a stud. And I see in the comments, Carolina versus Dallas font, very interesting. Very interesting. Very well could be. I think that's a great pick. In this series, I like watching Edmonton because you get to watch McDavid and you get to watch Draisaitl, and there's a lot of fast pace and it's interesting. But Edmonton is levels ahead of LA. Each year they seem to get better and they play them, and they have an easier way to beat them. It was 7 games, then it was 6 games. I think it's going to be 5 games this year. I have Edmonton in 5. Quick series, get some rest. I like Edmonton. They're a dangerous club. When you have the best player in the world, you have a chance every year. Vancouver, Nashville. Nashville Predators somehow are in the playoffs. I didn't see it coming. Barry Trotz takes over as the GM. You get Andrew Brunette, who comes over from New Jersey, was interim coach, becomes the head coach. Looks like they're going to miss the playoffs. They're going their season the way it's going. They lose 8-2, and they're heading to Vegas, and they're going to see U2 at the Sphere. And their owner canceled the trip. No tickets. We're not going to the Sphere. They then went on to have points in their next 17 games, and they won 15 of them. Best second half story, UC Saros, Kevin Lankinen. Great goalie. Saros, fantastic. Philip Forsberg, point per game player, 40 goal scorer. Roman Josi continues to get older, doesn't look like it. Fantastic. Ryan O'Reilly, productive season, first year in Nashville. Gustav Nyquist, 70 points. Really good year for him. Ryan McDonough, Luke Schenn, Jeremy Lauzon, who broke an NHL record for most hits in a single season. Former Q player, former Boston Bruin. Philip Forsberg's he's not a superstar, he's a star player. But the team doesn't have a superstar. They have heart, they have compete. Really good goalie. Championship pedigree with guys like McDonough and Luke Schenn. And they wanted it more than teams around the league. Vancouver in the upper end, not a playoff team last year. What a season under Rick Tocchet. Peter Laviolette would be the coach of the year for me, but I think Rick Tocchet will ultimately win the Jack Adams. JT Miller, another 100-point season. Just a really productive, good player for the Canucks. Niels Hoglander, 20-plus goals. Elias Pettersson gets his contract extension and has a really good season. Elias Lindholm, they trade for, hasn't been all that good. We'll see how he does in the playoffs. You have Connor Garland. I love Dakota Joshua. He's a nasty piece of business. He can score goals. And you have Myers, Soucy, Ian Cole, Zadorov, Hronek, Hughes, a big defense, which is what you need in the playoffs with guys that can go in the power play, which is where Quinn Hughes comes in, the Norris Trophy winner. Not to mention Thatcher Demko, who was out most of the second half of the year. He's back. He played the last week of the season, so he'll be good to go for Game 1, which is scheduled for Sunday night, 11 o'clock puck drop for Game 1. Nashville's a good team, and I see a lot of people talking about them kind of worrying about the Canucks. And I think the Canucks have their warts. The Canucks are flawed. They're not where they need to be to win a Stanley Cup. The Canucks will not be in a conference final. There's a newsflash. But I think they're better than Nashville. Goaltending, wash. Better defense, better players up front. Pettersson, JT Miller, a lot of these guys actually were in a conference final. They were in a conference final a number of years ago. It was in the bubble, but they did get there. They had that moment where, and I think for Vancouver, this is a great year for them. They're going to win a round. I have them beating Nashville in 6 games. Good moment for Nashville. Hopefully my boy Sawyer gets out to a couple games. I like Luke Evangelista. It's crazy that they're here. But I think Vancouver's a little too big, a little too skilled. And it'll be Vancouver, Edmonton in the second round. 2 Canadian teams, which should be a lot of fun. See here in the comments. Oilers versus Colorado. As Dallas gets beat up by beating Vegas and Oilers win. Colorado destroys Canucks. Colorado and Oilers will be an incredible series where speed and skill gets determined by goaltending. That one save from Fuhr or Moog wins the series. Dating myself here. Yeah, no kidding. That was before my time. I know who you're talking about, but I like the references back to, 1954? Just kidding. Vancouver, Edmonton. I got Edmonton winning that series. 6. I got Dallas beating Colorado, 7. Another really tough series. And here's why I changed with the results. I was going with Dallas and Florida in the Stanley Cup final. I'm pivoting off that opinion because I think the Dallas road is so difficult. And I think the Edmonton road is actually quite simplistic. LA is not a dangerous opponent. I think Vancouver is a really good team. Could they beat Edmonton? Sure. But I don't think they're good enough. I think you look at McDavid, he's going to just be so motivated to do it. I think you look at him and go, this is our year. This is our path to get there, to have that ultimate success. So because Dallas is so worn down, I don't think they're going to have enough. Edmonton's skill will take over. Edmonton's youth having a little more in the tank because of the effects on Dallas of the first 2 series. I believe Edmonton with McDavid, Draisaitl, and the crew will overcome a better team in Dallas and get to the Stanley Cup final. Edmonton, Florida is my Stanley Cup final. And I had Florida all year. And I almost went Edmonton, Carolina. It's a rematch of the 2006 Stanley Cup final. I think that was my Stanley Cup final last year that I predicted. And Edmonton let me down. And that very well could be it too, because in Carolina and Florida, it's like picking hairs. I got Edmonton winning the Cup. The path. And they're a pretty damn good team too. Stuart Skinner will be good enough because Aiden Hill was good enough last year. The Edmonton Oilers went 17 games this year, winning games in a row. They can play defensive hockey if they want to. I've said this before. I think they should play run and gun. But the thing, their opponents, they don't have to play run and gun every night because none of these teams can outscore them. Because you have Connor McDavid on the other side. I think Edmonton's path is set up for them to win. It's not easy, but it's not difficult either. They have the skill. I have them ending the Cup curse in Canada. And I have Connor McDavid winning a Stanley Cup, which is something we've all been waiting for. Crosby did it. Gretzky did it. Lemieux. Messier. The best players of all time. All are Stanley Cup champions. And you're really not on the list if you don't have a Stanley Cup. The NHL is not like ring culture with the NBA, where if you're Charles Barkley, you can't come on the top floor, you can't hang out with us because you don't have a ring. But really, if you're mentioned with the greatest of the greats, you have to start winning them. This is Connor McDavid's 9th NHL season already. It's flying by. Because of the path, because of the way he plays, his season, Edmonton defeats Dallas. They get Florida in the Stanley Cup final, and they ultimately beat them. Could be Edmonton, Carolina. Could easily be that. But I got Edmonton winning the Stanley Cup this year. And they're a scary team to rely on because they always seem to let you down. And I guess you could make that argument for every Canadian NHL team over the last 3 decades. But I think it ends this year. I love their path. And last night, not getting Vegas in the first round is such a big deal to me. Because I respect Vegas that much. And I don't even have them winning their first round series, but I have them making really fucking hard on the Dallas Stars. And then Dallas has to get Colorado, and I'd rather play Vancouver than play Colorado. Nathan MacKinnon's a Stanley Cup champion. Vancouver isn't. Pettersson's great. He's not on that level. Simple as that. It starts tomorrow. The Oilers don't play till Monday. And this is one thing. It was a great end of the regular season because you had drama and you had games that mattered to the end. I hate that you have game 2 for the Leafs and then Edmonton game 1 on Monday. I hate that. Hate it. Hate it. And you only have 2 games on Saturday. You don't have a late game Saturday night, but you have a late Sunday night game, 11 o'clock puck drop on Sunday. Thanks. I'm going to get a whole lot of sleep that night. Here's a word of advice to everybody. If you like watching games, doesn't matter where the games are. If you're just a hockey fan, not just watch the Leafs and then go to bed, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I mean, you only get so much of it. Get some sleep tonight. Go to bed early. Hydrate. And be prepared. Because it's a long run. 3-month push. The media talks about it. You're on TV every night. It's hard on us too. Podcast about it. Then you got to get up, watch the games, get about 2-3 hours of sleep, hit the gym, and be ready to go. But it's worth it because it's the sport we all love. The NBA playoffs also start tomorrow with 4 games, unlike the NHL. You got games from 2 o'clock till 9:30. Magic, Cavs, Suns, T-Wolves. Sixers at the Mecca playing the Knicks. And Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. I got the I had the Magic beating the Cavaliers in 7, road team. I have the Suns beating the Timberwolves in 6, road team. I got the Knicks beating the 76ers in 6. My Knicks, love the Knicks. Not really. Lakers Nuggets, much closer series than it was last year. I think it's going to be close. I just think the Nuggets are better than the Lakers overall. I got the Nuggets winning that one. Other half of the draw, to be determined against the Celtics tonight. We got more playing games tonight. Win and go home type stuff. Let's look on FanDuel Sportsbook. Look up the odds here. Bulls, Heat. No Jimmy Butler for the Miami Heat. Not available. Could be out for the foreseeable future. You got the Bulls. Caruso was injured. Sounds like he's going to play. You can get the Bulls +2, FanDuel Sportsbook. No Jimmy Butler. I can't believe the Bulls actually aren't the favorite on the road. Heat do have Heat culture. They find a way to win. Without Jimmy, I don't think they do. I'm taking the Bulls +2, and I think the Bulls win tonight. I think the Bulls will play the Celtics and get crushed in round 1. Kings Pelicans. No Zion Williamson for the Pelicans. He was injured in the play-in game. Sacramento defeated Golden State, ending that kind of dynasty. I like Sacramento to beat New Orleans, in particular without Zion. Then to meet Oklahoma City, be a much better series, I think anyway. But I got the Celtics winning round 1. I got the Clippers beating the Mavericks. I got the Pacers beating the Bucks because I don't think Giannis is going to be around for that series. And I have OKC beating whoever wins tonight. NBA Finals, I got the Nuggets going back. I have the Celtics cake, just a magic carpet ride to the finals for them in the East because the East is weak. And I got the Nuggets winning back-to-back championships. That's what I got in the NBA. Which should be Nuggets Celtics would be a great. I think if the Nuggets go out at any point, they lose to the Lakers, they lose second round. The Celtics win the title against anybody out west. That's how I have it. Celtics should win. I mean, they won 60-plus games this year. They're the best team in the NBA. So we'll see what they can do come playoff time. Great show today. Loved it. You got playoffs this weekend. You have the RBC Heritage in Hilton Head, one of my favorite courses. Currently a 4-way tie for first. Tom Hoagie, Sepp Straka, Morikawa, who was great at the Masters, and JT Poston. But then you have Mac Hughes from Canada, Ludwig Aberg, Patrick Rogers, all at 10 under. Thigala, Cantlay, Ben On, 9 under. Scotty Scheffler, still playing. Some went 6 under, 8 under, only 3 off the lead. Those people atop the leaderboard are shitting their pants because he's getting hot. McIlroy, 7 under. So you got some big names, great golf course, afternoon sports, afternoon golf. Should be a fantastic weekend. Be back on Monday to recap the first couple of games, tee up game 1 of Oilers-Kings because, as I mentioned, Oilers-Kings doesn't start until Monday, and Golden Knights Stars does not start until Monday. So we'll wait for those games. But tomorrow, you got Islanders, Hurricanes, 6 o'clock. You got Leafs, Bruins, prime time at 9 Atlantic. So enjoy the games. Enjoy your weekends. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Appreciate the support as always. I'm Noah Warren. This is To The Point.